Welcome back, everybody. We've got quite the news roundup for you all today, focusing on big changes in Syria and some pretty fascinating legal cases happening in France.
Wow. Yeah, sounds like a lot to cover.
Yeah,
Let's jump right into Syria then. A lot's happened since the fall of Bashar al-Assad.
definitely. Just weeks since Hayat Tahrir al-Sham or HTS took over. And what's really interesting to me is how the U.S. is reacting to this new situation. Like, they revoked the $10 million bounty on the new leader, Ahmed al-Shara.
Yeah, that's a big move for sure. It seems like they're open to engaging with him, even though they still officially call HTS a terrorist group. They even had diplomats meet in Damascus for the first time in over a decade.
It does feel like they're walking a fine line, trying to push for an inclusive government, but also having to work with a group they call terrorists.
Exactly. And they're also trying to find out about those missing Americans, like the journalist Austin Tice. But it's not just about international relations. We have to think about the Syrian people and how they're handling this.
Yeah, especially minorities who are living under Assad. What are their thoughts on all this change?
Well, there's a mix of hope and worry from groups like Alawites, Christians, Druze, and Shia Muslims. Some Alawites are saying they want nothing to do with Assad anymore, talking about how bad the economy was under his rule.
It's interesting to hear that from them. They were always seen as Assad's main supporters. What about the other groups? What are they saying?
Well, the Christians, they seem cautiously optimistic, hoping HTS will be moderate and Syria won't end up like Afghanistan or Libya. And the Druze, they had some independence under Assad, so they're focused on keeping their rights and freedoms now. They've been holding these big public gatherings to show their unity.
It does feel like everyone's trying to find their place in this new world. But something that really struck me about this whole regime change is those abandoned homes of Assad's top officials.
Oh, yeah. Those houses, those lavish places in the rich parts of Damascus, really makes you think about all the suffering regular Syrians went through. Figures like Jamil Hassan, the butcher, the ex-head of Air Force Intelligence, and Hussein Luka, the spider, head of the General Security Directorate.
Just those nicknames tell you a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Both wanted for war crimes, fled with their families. You can tell it was a rushed escape. Hassan's house had a half-eaten cake sitting there, clothes all over, and a framed photo with Assad.
Like a frozen moment in time. It shows how suddenly everything changed.
It really does. And it leaves us with a question, what happens to these guys? Will they face trial or try to make deals? That's a whole other part of this story that's still unfolding.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, let's switch gears now and head over to France. There's been some big legal cases making headlines. First, the mass rape trial that got the whole world watching.
Yeah, the case of Giselle Pellicot. Her ex-husband, Dominique Pellicot, and 50 other men were found guilty. This trial really brought drug-facilitated sexual assault into the spotlight. And Giselle Pellicot's choice to let the world know her name, that was incredibly brave. It got people talking and shined a light on this awful crime.
No doubt about it. Leaders like President Macron and Chancellor Schultz even praised her courage. She gave a voice to so many victims.
Absolutely. Okay, changing topics slightly now. A case that shows how dangerous online hate speech can be, the Samuel Paty beheading.
Yeah, that was a stark reminder of how words online can have real and terrible consequences offline.
8 people got sentenced for their role in the hate campaign that led to Paty's death back in 2020. It all started with false stuff on social media. People saying he showed inappropriate pictures of the Prophet Muhammad during a class about free speech.
And the court decided that even though they might not have known what the killer would do, their actions were considered incitement. This is a big one. Makes you think about being responsible and thinking critically in this digital age.
For sure. We can't forget that our words, especially online, have power and can sometimes be dangerous. And speaking of dangerous, the last story from France takes us to Rio and a gang called the Pure Third Command.
They've been causing a stir. They're putting the Star of David on their drugs.
The interesting thing is what they believe. They're evangelical Christians who think the second coming of Christ is connected to the return of Jews to Israel. They even call themselves soldiers of crime fighting for Jesus.
Yeah. It makes you wonder about faith and crime and how they mix. Some call them narco-Pentecostals. And there's worry because they're cracking down on Afro-Brazilian religions in their areas, closing down temples and forcing their beliefs on others.
Wow. A tangled mess of social, religious, and criminal elements.
Definitely. Shows how some groups twist religion to justify what they do and control others. It really is. Okay, let's shift gears back to the U.S. now. We just barely avoided a government shutdown after a whole week of political fighting.
It was down to the wire. President Biden signed a much smaller spending bill just on Saturday to keep things running.
Yeah, but it's not over. President Trump was a big factor in all this, even though he's not in office yet. His influence was definitely there.
His presence was definitely felt.
Yeah, him and Elon Musk. Musk has been giving Trump advice on cutting government spending. They both went after that first budget deal, the one both parties agreed on, telling Republicans to vote no.
And that's exactly what happened. House Republicans shot it down at first, so they had to go back, change it, and take out stuff Trump didn't like giving lawmakers a pay raise.
It was a real power play. But that smaller bill, it did pass both the House and the Senate in the end. No shutdown.
That's good, at least. But this whole thing shows you how much power Elon Musk has these days.
Yeah, he's a major player in politics now, for sure. And speaking of influence, someone who's chosen not to use hers in politics, at least for now, is Lara Trump.
She decided not to run for that Senate seat in Florida. Everyone thought she was a shoo-in.
Yeah, it was a surprise. She would have been a strong replacement for Senator Rubio. He's going to be in Trump's cabinet. But she posted on X saying she's out and hinted at a big announcement coming in January.
Intriguing. Makes you wonder what she's planning. Another political move? Something completely different.
We'll see. Okay, changing gears again. There was a disturbing incident. A U.S. warplane was shot down over the Red Sea. Looks like it was friendly fire.
This was after the U.S. did those airstrikes against Houthi targets in Yemen.
Right. A guided missile cruiser, the USS Gettysburg, accidentally fired on an FA-18 Hornet from the USS Harry S. Truman.
It's a reminder that military operations are always dangerous and complex, even when allies are fighting the same enemy.
Absolutely. Thankfully, the crew ejected safely. One of them had minor injuries, though. But it just shows how high the stakes are and how easily things can go wrong.
Definitely high stakes. And speaking of, the conflict in Gaza is still going on. Sadly, children have been killed in the latest Israeli airstrikes.
Gaza's civil defense agency said a school where families who lost their homes were staying was hit. 8 people died, 4 of them children. Israel's military says there was a Hamas command center in the building.
And to add to the tragedy, the head of the World Health Organization has asked Israel to stop attacking near a hospital in northern Gaza, worried about the patients and healthcare workers there.
Yeah, it's a really concerning situation. The death toll is rising, and everyone's feeling the urgency to find a solution. There might be some hope, though. Palestinian groups involved in the fighting have said a ceasefire agreement is close.
That would be good news. All right, let's move on to Nigeria now. Another terrible incident, a deadly crush at an event giving out free food.
This one happened at a charity thing in the town of Okija. 22 people died trying to get donations.
This is the third one this week. 10 people at a Catholic church in Abuja, and then a horrifying 35 children at a carnival in Ibadan, all at events with free food.
It's a sign of how desperate things are for many people in Nigeria. Food prices, transportation costs, everything has gone way up in the last year and a half. More and more people are ending up poor and hungry.
President Tinubu wants stricter crowd control at these events. But these incidents really make you question the government's policies and the growing economic hardship people are facing.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers. You have to tackle the root of the problem, not just the symptoms. And talking about economic issues, President-elect Trump has been saying some interesting things about the Panama Canal.
At a rally in Phoenix, he said Panama is overcharging American ships to use the canal, that vital waterway connecting the Atlantic and Pacific.
He even suggested he might try to get the canal back, saying the U.S. got a raw deal when they gave control to Panama back in '99, under a treaty President Carter signed in '77.
But does Trump have a legal leg to stand on here?
Analysts are saying no. Those treaties were very carefully written to respect Panama's sovereignty. Trying to undo them would probably break international law.
Panama's president, Jose Raul Mulino, wasn't happy about Trump's words, called the canal a part of Panama that can't be taken away, said their control over it is not up for debate.
It feels like another one of those situations where Trump's pushing the limits, making big statements that might not hold up in reality.
Definitely stirring the pot. And another sign that his second term could be just as unpredictable and disruptive as his first.
Okay, let's go to Germany now. A terrible attack happened at a Christmas market in Magdeburg.
Awful. 5 people were killed and over 200 injured when a car drove right into the crowded market. The suspect, a doctor from Saudi Arabia named Taleb al-Abdulmohsen, has appeared in court.
What's really disturbing is that he used an emergency lane to get into the market. People are outraged, asking about security, especially with the election coming up in Germany.
People are angry. And rightfully so. They feel like security failed. Chancellor Scholz even got heckled by the public when he visited the site.
And it gets worse. It turns out Saudi Arabia had warned Germany about this guy years ago.
That's unsettling.
Sources say the Saudis sent warnings to German intelligence and the foreign ministry about Al Abdul Mohsen's extremist views, but it seems like those warnings were ignored.
This is a tragedy that raises serious questions about intelligence sharing, threat assessment, and how well we can prevent these kinds of attacks.
It shows that even places that seem secure can be vulnerable. Okay, let's shift gears to a story that's been making waves in the U.S., the murder of healthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
This one's had some twists and turns. Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, was shot and killed outside a hotel in Manhattan earlier this month. A 26-year-old, Luigi Mangione, has been arrested.
But here's the thing. Some people online are actually praising this Mangione guy, making him out to be some kind of folk hero.
Yeah, I know. It's disturbing.
They're venting their anger at the U.S. healthcare system, at private insurance companies. They see Thompson's death as some kind of twisted revenge.
It's a scary trend. Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas is deeply concerned about it. He called the rhetoric extremely alarming and said it shows a dangerous undercurrent in the country.
He's especially worried that people are calling a suspected murderer a hero. And it makes sense. This kind of online praise for violence can have a real impact, might even push others to act out their frustrations in harmful ways.
A scary example of how online talk can turn toxic and lead to real harm. On a more positive note, there's been progress in those ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas.
A Palestinian official involved in the discussions told the BBC that they're 90% there.
That's encouraging.
Sounds like they could agree on a 3-stage ceasefire in a few days. One of the main things they're talking about is creating a buffer zone along the border between Israel and Gaza.
So, Israel would keep a military presence there, but it would address Palestinian security concerns. Sounds like they're trying to find a middle ground.
And there's another good sign. The deal would include a prisoner exchange. Every female Israeli soldier released would mean 20 Palestinian prisoners freed.
A step toward reconciliation. Hopefully it'll lead to lasting peace in the region. Back to the U.S. now. The government avoided a shutdown this weekend.
After days of political back and forth, they passed a spending bill at the last minute. So the federal agencies will keep getting funding.
It was tense. President-elect Trump being against that first deal definitely added to the drama.
Oh, yeah. He and Elon Musk told Republicans to vote no on that first version, and they did. But in the end, they passed a smaller version. No shutdown.
Close one. But it seems like cooler heads prevailed.
And thank goodness for that. Government shutdowns are messy and expensive. Avoiding one was the best thing for the country.
It really is a relief they dodged that shutdown. This whole fight over the budget shows just how much power is in play right now and how much influence President-elect Trump already has even before he steps into office.
Definitely highlights the challenges ahead. Could be a lot of political gridlock. But hey, it also shows the system can be flexible. They can find compromises even when there's strong disagreement.
That's true. And speaking of navigating tricky political waters, let's go back to Lara Trump's decision to pull out of that Florida Senate race. People are still talking about it.
Yeah, that big announcement she mentioned for January on X, everyone's curious. Some think it'll be another political move, maybe running for the House or a cabinet position in the new Trump administration. Others think it could be something totally different, like a business venture or a personal project.
It reminds us that politicians have lives and ambitions outside of politics. We'll have to see what she reveals in January.
For sure. Well, that about wraps up our whirlwind tour of global news and what's happening around the world. Regime changes, legal battles, political maneuvering, social unrest. It's been a fascinating look at a world that's always changing.
It always amazes me how events that seem totally separate actually connect, and how individual choices and actions can have such a ripple effect, shaping history. It just shows how important it is to stay informed and involved.
Couldn't agree more. When we understand what's going on, how complex it all is, and what the consequences might be, we can have better conversations. We can be part of a society that's more informed and engaged.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through the news. Keep searching for different points of view, have those thoughtful discussions, and stay curious about the world around you. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.